have that. But first of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Mike Setousu, and I work at the African Union Commission Education Division, and I will be facilitating this webinar. If it's agreed, we will go ahead and present the cluster. And then once Mr. Mashaleni joins the meeting, we can ask him to make some remarks to the participants on this call. I would like to ask Dr. Gertrude Eduarda to let me know if this is agreeable as a way to proceed.
No problem.
Già fatto partire la registrazione anche.
All right.
Sylvia, you can mute yourself, maybe.
So I will go ahead and then share my screen.
Oui. Quand le système d'interprétation ne fonctionne pas, on n'a pas l'interprétation en français.
Oui. Je vais faire, if you don't mind, Mitch said, I will just make a very brief comment about the interpretation. I will speak in Portuguese and in French. Just 1 second. Bonjour, chers participants, participantes. It is functioning in Portuguese. I see it. I can hear. Although it is, well, it is in the off channel, I think. Well, but we can try. Bonjour, chers participants. Nous vous remercions beaucoup de trouver du temps pour cette réunion. Pour le moment, l'interprétation a encore quelques problèmes techniques, mais nous espérons que bientôt les problèmes seront réglés. Caros participantes, caros senhoras e senhores, agradecemos muito a vossa participação nesta reunião hoje. Bem-vindos, bem-vindas. Vamos dar início.
Senhoras e senhores, muito obrigado. Agradecemos a vossa participação nesta reunião.
Daqui a mais uns instantes vamos ter a parte técnica da interpretação para as 3 línguas.
Tentar resolver a questão técnica das 3 línguas.
Obrigada.
Obrigado.
C'est résolu.
Thank you so much, Eduarda. And now that I believe we have had more participants joining us, welcome once again to this information webinar on the African School Curriculum Survey. And we will be going straight into the agenda. We've already mentioned that the remarks that will be delivered by the head of Education Division of the African Union, we'll be able to have that as we go on in the meeting. But then we'll start with the presentation on the curriculum cluster of the African Union. First, let me check if my screen is visible.
Yes, it is.
All right, thank you. So we just wanted to, first of all, let you know more about this cluster of the African Union, which is supporting the work that is being done in terms of the curriculum survey, and also really provide an avenue here for the various participants of this important activity to see how they can also work with this cluster towards achieving the goals of the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. The cluster was launched in December 2018 in the African Union headquarters. And essentially, this is the 12th cluster that was launched under the Continental Education Strategy for Africa. These clusters are working on various thematic areas towards advancing the goals of education across the continent. because we realized that in previous strategies, you have the African Union doing a lot with partners supporting, but then how do we institutionalize this support from partners? And this gave birth to the work of the clusters. And essentially, clusters allow various stakeholders across the continent to participate in the work that the AU is doing and be able to be part of influencing the continental dialogue and agenda. So here you can see the various organizations that were a part of the launch of this cluster, and this formed the inaugural members of this cluster. Various organizations, and after this meeting, we've had more organizations also join the cluster as well. So what is the mandate of this cluster? One of the key things is to really take stock of existing regional and continental curriculum frameworks, which speaks to what is being done in this particular activity of the African School Curriculum Survey, which is why it is so key. It was so key for us to support this work which is being done, because we understand that if we are going to be able to provide the support, then there needs to be a clear understanding of what is happening on the ground. And that is why we are working with you, the representatives of the national curriculum agencies, who really know what is happening on the ground, to tell us and to help us understand are functioning. And then we are able to the continent and be able to develop the right frameworks that address this issue. As you know, the AU's main goal and the main objective under the Agenda 23 is to really drive integration on the continent. So how do we understand the frameworks in the various African Union member states, and also that leads us to the process of harmonizing and also fostering integration. So you see the other mandates of the cluster to really establish minimum standards and also to help provide some guidance for curriculum development across the continent, as well as being able to instill entrepreneurship and employability skills, adding those essential elements that we all know are becoming very important, the issue of employability and skills development across the continent, which has become so critical, understanding the importance of creating jobs and helping our graduates to be able to fit into the job market. So then this cluster is also advancing those issues and being able to bring up issues as they evolve. We know the COVID pandemic has definitely brought on another aspect, we should say, of the areas that we need to consider as priorities when it comes to curriculum development. So here you can see more of the mandates of the cluster elaborated. But then you also see that we say the cluster works with the other clusters. As mentioned earlier, there are 11 more clusters working at various levels of the education spectrum, from early childhood to higher education, STEM education, so many other thematic areas. How do we as a cluster, or how do we as stakeholders who are working in curriculum, work with all these other stakeholders to ensure that we have a more effective outcome, and by building those synergies? So that is also one of the main goals of the CISA cluster, the African Union cluster mechanism, to help stakeholders to work very well amongst themselves under the vision, the continental vision for education. So I go straight into the structure of the cluster. The cluster is chaired by the African Union, and then the co-chair of the cluster is South Africa, the Republic of South Africa. So here you see essentially the various roles of the leadership of the cluster. And then the coordinator here is the African Curriculum Association, who is really responsible for bringing together the various stakeholders that are members of the cluster. And speaking of the members, you can see we have elaborated the various stakeholder groups that are part of the cluster as well. We have the AU member states, we have the continental international development agencies, we have academic institutions, national development agencies. All of them are a very important part of the work that is being done. We work with them and to develop these frameworks, to validate these frameworks, and to gather their inputs to ensure that whatever is being done captures really what is happening on the ground. A key issue here to emphasize is that in as much as the member states, really the main member states, the African Union member states, Africa was really developed to serve the member states. And that is why we also need them to participate in the process and be able to also work with them to see how these frameworks and these public goods that are developed by the cluster can be implemented or can be incorporated into what is being done on the ground. So here are some of the achievements of the cluster. We have been able to contribute to ongoing publications that are going to have continental, that are going to be circulated across the continent. And we've also worked to develop a work plan for up to 7 years, which we are working with. And one of the key activities of this work plan is this survey, which we are working on. Furthermore, we worked with the coordinator of the cluster to hold the International Curriculum Conference in Ghana. That was in 2019, which also brought together various stakeholders in curriculum development across African Union member states and beyond Africa to really discuss very critical issues that affect curriculum. And then we've also worked to bring the curriculum Yes, sorry about that. So we've also worked with the we've also brought in the curriculum agenda in the various high-level events that are organized at the continental level, the ministerial meetings. How do we also bring in the things that are developed by various stakeholders, such as the outcomes of this survey, which we are working on today? How do we bring it to the ministers and to the high-level meetings and let them know that this is what has been developed and this can be used also or incorporated in what is being done at the national level? This is something that we've done in during the specialized technical committee of education sciences. We brought to them to use this opportunity to thank you for listening to this presentation, and thank you very much. Yes, so I am also doubling as the facilitator of the meeting. So I'm going to switch from the presentation mode and then go back to the agenda. We've seen that we've had more members join us since we started. And we have here the head of education division who has joined the meeting as well, Mr. Hambani Mashaleni. So if Mr. Mashaleni can hear us, we would like to welcome him to the meeting and also to really ask him to take the floor and present some remarks on behalf of the African Union. Mr. Mashaleni, you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mix, colleague from the African Union. Ladies and gentlemen, representatives of national agencies in charge of curricular development and the CESA curriculum cluster, I'm very pleased to welcome you to this meeting, which marks a very important event that is leading to the survey of school curriculum in Africa And we all know that evidence-based decisions help us to really address the issues we are facing in the continent, and this particular survey is very important. My name is Aban Masheleni. I am the interim head of the Division of Education in the African Union Commission, and I'm very happy to join you today. It's my first time to welcome you. You are African Union, you are our bosses, and we are very happy that you are also ready to collaborate and to work with us. You are fully aware that we've got an Agenda 2063 which charts the course of peace, of integration, prosperity, but most important, it also opens up a very huge space that Africans must actually lead their development, their destiny, and we need to have people-centered, comprehensive programs on the continent, and therefore the issues of curricular development are very critical. We do have the education strategy phase 16 to 25, which is our blueprint to ensure that within our long journey of Agenda 2063, we have the appropriate skills, appropriate education and skills and education revolution, which is set to transform our continent to respond to the issues of development. And therefore, we need quality systems of education, training, from early childhood to higher education. We need to vet and non-formal education so as for us to have more innovation in education and training backed by responsive curricula. And therefore, the survey you want to undertake is very critical moving forward. In this current situation where COVID has really paralyzed our education system, and we are all left with but nothing other than to imagine, to reimagine how education will be after the COVID, the survey of school curriculum becomes very critical. As we emerge out of the COVID, things will not return immediately to normal, but there are some that will adopt and will move forward with them, such as online working, online learning, as well as digitalization of the continent. And therefore, it is very critical for you to examine the curricular system of the continent. I'm not going to take much of your time because I know the work you have at hand is very critical, but let me convey the greetings from the Commissioner of the African Union, Her Excellency, our Commissioner, Professor Sarah Agbo, who is very much pleased with the work you are doing. The clusters are a model that we have put in place to enable all institutions on the continent within the various spaces of education, within the ecosystem of education in Africa, to take part, to help, to participate in the implementation of our continental educational strategy. Mr. Nick, the floor is yours. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to say these few words. And I wish you the best in this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Masheleni. We really appreciate your comments and all the support that you've really conveyed to us from the African Union Commission in regards to this activity. And we would like to go on with the agenda and ask Dr. Gertrude from the African Curriculum Association to make a presentation on the school curriculum survey, which we've mentioned so many times already in the meeting, just to help you, our participants, to understand the activity and really the objectives and the key milestones that are planned for this activity. Over to you, Dr. Gertrude.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mitch. Thank you very much, Eduarda, for spearheading this. I also add my voice to the voice of those who have spoken before me to welcome you all to this great milestone in the journey to improve the quality of education in Africa through curriculum. I thank God that has enabled us all to be present today. Yeah, but because of the internet connection, allow me to switch off my video so that I don't get interrupted as I talk. Yeah.
Gertrude, you can go on.
Hello?
Gertrude, you can go on.
Yeah, I think this one is for Eduarda, okay. The slide which is put on the show.
Good afternoon, good morning, participants. We are already now 52 participants. Let me introduce very, very briefly myself, Eduarda Castelbranco. I'm very pleased, honored to be cooperating with Dr. Gertrude Namubiru today and in the future in this joint initiative that has actually been, of course, promoted with great enthusiasm and consistency by African Curriculum Association, notably by Dr. Gertrude herself. European Training Foundation, I represent European Training Foundation, working on the project African Continental Qualifications Framework, development of the ACQF, and this is the reason why we are here today introducing this joint initiative. So as you can see, we will have a couple of important topics throughout this presentation. So very briefly on the initiators, then also very briefly on the African Continental Qualifications Framework project, the objectives also of this school curriculum survey, the broad research questions of the study, the outputs, main milestones, the interplay between curriculum and national qualifications framework, and the potential contribution of the study also for the process and the concept of the ACQF, the African Continental Qualifications Framework. Gertrude, you are next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eduarda. Yeah, my name is Gertrude Namubiru, Doctor. I'm the Secretary General for African Curriculum Association. I'm also a coordinator representative for African Curriculum Association, as it is the coordinator of the curriculum cluster at African Union. Just to give you a brief history and how the association came into existence, African Curriculum Association originated from African Curriculum Organization that existed in the 1970s. And somewhere, somehow, it lost track and it collapsed. So the conference we had in 2018 at Entebbe in Uganda agreed to revitalize the organization that existed in the 70s, but we resolved to call it an association, not an organization this time. So that is how it came into existence. The African Curriculum Association is a registered continental association focusing on curriculum development, implementation, assessment, and evaluation. And its core mandate is to improve the quality of education in Africa. The association has a secretariat located in Uganda at National Curriculum Development Center. For more information, you can visit our website. I will write it in the chat. African Curriculum Association has an executive committee with the chairperson from Uganda and the co-chairperson from Chad, because we needed a diversity of people from different corners of Africa. We have other members from Kenya, Tanzania, Cameroon, Ghana, and Namibia. At this moment, I request the members present, the members of the executive committee who are present, to wave at the people. Please, just open your videos and wave to the members.
Hello, members.
Yeah, that one is the chairperson.
Grace Baguma. Nice to see all of you.
Jackie? Jacqueline, please. Can you wave to the members? Julius? Okay, maybe they will join in later.
Gertrude, I've just come on. Jackie's here.
Yeah, please wave to the members. Yeah, I would like also to inform that
I am also here. Felicia, thank you.
Oh, Felicia, you are also welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, at this moment, I would like to inform the members present here that the membership is still open to the organizations and individuals. So you can join the association and we build the Africa we want together. So African Curriculum Association is also a member of the African Continental Qualification Framework, where it advises the committee developing qualification framework for Africa. CESA Curriculum Cluster, as I have already mentioned, the African Curriculum Association coordinates the curriculum cluster of the African Union's Continental Education Strategy for Africa, which was established, as already said by Mitch, which was established and launched on the 12th of December of 2018, and it was designated by the African Union and other agencies present at the launch and members in attendance on that day, with the exclusive responsibility of coordinating the newly established African Union Curriculum Cluster. In that case, African Curriculum Association coordinates the Continental Education Strategy for Africa that provides a vigorous opportunity for a variety of players to participate in coalition with African Union and other partners to implement education matters in the continent as the continental framework. Hello? There is noise. There is noise in the background.
Could we ask the participants to kindly mute their mics if they are not on the floor, please? Thank you very much.
Yeah. The third ordinary session of the African Union Specialized Technical Committee on Education, Science and Technology recognized the important role and efforts of ACA in supporting member states to review and develop their national curricula, and mandated ACA to work with member states to ensure that curricula on the continent meet the 21st demands. We found this mandate given to us a bit difficult, just because we didn't have enough information on curriculum policies and practices as they are used in different member states. Thus, a need for this initiative. So we decided that for us to serve Africa well and better, we need, first of all, to carry out a mapping study to establish the policies and practices used in different member states. Therefore, ACA, in collaboration with the African Union, European Union Skills for Youth Employability for Africa, GIZ, ETF, and the CESA Curriculum Cluster, agreed to undertake a curriculum survey exercise in the African Union member states to collect information on curriculum policies and practices. That is the reason for this gathering, to kickstart the survey activity. We thank Eduarda so much for accepting to take an instrumental role to ensure that the curriculum survey commences. Eduarda, can you please wave to the members? Yeah, thank you very much. Next slide.
Eduarda, you are muted.
Eduarda, we don't hear you.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Dr. Namubiru, for the first for this excellent start of the presentation. And I'd like also to thank very much African Union Commission ST for the leadership, for the support throughout this initial process of discussion towards this very important day, this launch, this pre-survey webinar with all of you. So as I said earlier, my name is Eduarda Castel Branco. I have the pleasure to be working on the African Continental Qualifications Framework project. I have the role of thematic coordinator, and let me say a few words about this project. So this is an important policy initiative of the African Union, development of the African Continental Qualifications Framework. And this work, this process is underway, started in 2019, it will go until 2022. The entire initiative and the concept of the project is very well anchored on AU policies and strategies. The main objective of ACQF is to contribute towards a sustainable policy instrument working in synergy with other continental synergies. The project supporting this initiative is Skills for Youth Employability, jointly with SIFA, Skills Initiative for Africa. The main output by 2022 will be then the ACQF policy and technical document and action plan. A few words very, very quickly. The entire work started in 2019 and throughout 2020 with the ACQF mapping study. It is published. It's a very rich collection of information. Then in 2021-2022, the work is focused on the indicated outputs you have on the screen. So first of all, scenarios and options for the ACQF. It is a feasibility study. Then the output to, of course, the most important outcome of this entire endeavor and work, the ACQF policy and technical document. And this is all supported, of course, by some important effort in terms of capacity development and networking, which we are calling ACQF Capacity Development Program. And to finalize a technical foundation, so to contribute from the start to the sustainability of this project, the ACQF project is also developing guidelines and a website and other analysis, including contributing to this analysis, which will hopefully also give very interesting insights and orientations for the ACQF concept itself. Gertrude, your turn now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Eduarda. Now let us go to the objectives of this initiative. The objectives of this initiative are mainly two. One, to take stock and map the state of play and developments of school curricula so as to identify the different curriculum policies and practices, to compare the application, trends, similarities, and divergences, and the interactions of curricula with the national qualifications framework. We realize that the curriculum and the national qualification frameworks have a connection. There is a link. There is no way we can work on one and leave out the other. So they have to go on concurrently. We hope to develop objective number 2. We hope to develop the continental curriculum framework for Africa, which will be informed and underpinned by the conclusions and findings of the mapping study. This is hoped to be developed under the support of CESA curriculum cluster so that it becomes an authentic document to be used as a source of reference for all African countries as they develop their curricula. Next slide. Objectives of the school curriculum survey. The objectives of the school curriculum survey are to identify the different types of frameworks, conceptual, policy, and others, underpinning curriculum development and implementation in the African Union countries, to identify and map important features, trends, new developments and challenges in curriculum development and implementation in the African Union countries, to examine the alignment, interaction of school curricula with national qualification framework principles and descriptors. We realize that many countries, as we speak now, don't have qualification frameworks, national qualification frameworks, though they may be having maybe curriculum frameworks. So this will help us to put things proper. To contribute, another objective is to contribute with qualitative information relevant for SDGs, also to generate evidence and insights contributing to inform and support policies on curriculum development in African Union member states. Another slide. Back to you, Eduarda.
Thank you. We are sharing this presentation in another testimony of our joint work. So from the information shared right now by Dr. Gertrude Namubiru on the objectives, we can then derive the, let's say, the broad research questions. And they can be summed up to these 3 most important questions you can see on your screen. So the first one, well, which frameworks, conceptual, policy, technical, inform or underpin school curriculum in school education? So not all subsectors, but those indicated, meaning basic, secondary, TVET certificate awarding in our African countries. The other important broad research question is, to what extent do school curricula in African countries contribute to transformation, to include and develop new knowledge and skills related with the megatrends of the enormous transformations we are living throughout these few last years and in the future. And finally, the last, let's say, broad research question is, how do African school curricula align with qualifications frameworks? And let me just add here a piece of information to recall. One of the findings of the ACQF mapping study is that currently approximately 17 African Union member states have national qualifications frameworks adopted, in implementation, or started implementation. Another 13 countries have qualifications frameworks in development and consultation. And finally, approximately 8, 9 are at early thinking stage, initiating the first steps towards developing their national qualifications frameworks. So this is important information to be taken into account as well during the conceptualization of the African School Curriculum Survey and its implementation. Let me also mention, we were just speaking about the transformation of skills, transformation of work, the big mega trends related with greening, with digitalization, automation, societal movements as well. And I wanted just to show a little bit what are the, let's say, anticipated top 10 skills of 2025 according to the World Economic Forum, the Future of Jobs Report 2020. And here, what is also interesting to note is that some of these top 10 skills are for the first time appearing in this list. And these are, for example, skills such as resilience, stress tolerance and flexibility, but also active learning and learning strategies. What will then mean this demand, this growing demand and growing understanding that these are fundamental sets of skills and competences for all citizens in this period ahead of us, 2025, let's say? How can curricula take into account this information? So as I just said, active learning and learning strategies are new, as well as resilience and stress tolerance, flexibility are new in this list. Now the floor is again yours, Gertrude.
Okay, thank you very much, Eduarda. Now I'm taking you through the outputs of the curriculum survey. These are going to be our outputs. There is an output which is not put here, which is already done. That is procuring the consultant. Then after that, we have to show evidence by developing survey instruments and also developing a database for all the information concerning curriculum and also for all our respondents. We shall have to show analytical report based on the survey and also a synthesis infographic. That will indicate that a survey has been done and there is some progress and there is some output in place. We shall have several webinars to discuss the findings and also to disseminate all the information which we shall have gotten from the survey with our respondents and discuss the way forward before presenting the whole thing to African Union for authenticating. Next slide, back to you.
Thank you very much. So very briefly, these are the main milestones, steps, let's say, as we, let's say, conceptualized within the preparation phase and discussions for this specific study. So, and they are also indicated in the terms of reference for this study. So, a pre-survey webinar, which is being done today, inception report, a very important moment to make sure that the expectations are clear and the methodology of work as well. Then the development of the survey instrument, questionnaire, testing it, update the respondents list, which is already prepared, but it will of course be updated. I'm admitting participants. Yeah, okay, sorry. Doing several things at the same time. A user's guide. Of course, all this instrument will be in 3 languages, English, French, and Portuguese. Then launch the survey. Desktop research will, of course, also accompany this as the data collection from primary data. So the desktop research has already been started naturally, and it will contribute throughout the process. The analytical report, the synthesis report, and then dissemination. The reason why this meeting today is so important is that the contribution, the participation of all respondents, of all stakeholders is fundamental for this undertaking, for this survey to be successful and reach the planned objectives. And we count very much that this meeting and other forms of communication, interaction, of course, the leading role of the CISA cluster and ACA will as well provide an important support for better participation and response to the survey. Yeah, we were talking earlier, since the beginning of this presentation today, about this interplay between curriculum and national qualifications frameworks. And we wanted just to very briefly mention some of the elements that are part of this interplay, interaction, as these are, of course, both are important elements of any education and training system, ecosystem even, can we say. The curriculum from one side will be examined from the point of view of purpose, values, outcomes, knowledge, practical skills, whereas the NQF includes, of course, the interaction concerns to what extent curriculum and NQF are aligned, are coherent in terms of wider objectives. Does curriculum contribute to the wider objectives as defined by the country, by the stakeholders, the authorities in the national qualifications framework? Are the level descriptors, the learning outcomes approach in place? How do they cross-fertilize between curriculum and national qualifications framework? So what is the kind of alignment between curriculum and NQF? The application in teaching, assessment, certification, teachers and trainers awareness as well on the national qualifications framework, the learner-centered approaches to learning. Also, how is learner performance and achievements affected, positively or not, by this interplay between curriculum and national qualifications frameworks? The flexibility versus rigidity of curriculum and national qualifications framework, how does this interplay contribute to greater flexibility and also responsiveness to change and to innovation? And finally, very important, lifelong learning. Notably, for example, validation of non-formal and informal learning. So will we find coherence or many tensions throughout this analysis? Will we find transparency and quality throughout this analysis or with the help of this analysis? And finally, we would like just to also, let's say, formulate a few points concerning the potential contribution of this analysis, this important study to the ACQF process and the concepts that will be the conceptualization of the ACQF as a policy instrument. As I said earlier, the ACQF builds very much on evidence. It started with the mapping study, but now we hope to have insights, findings from the school curriculum survey contributing as well. And the ACQF, as you know, has the ambition to contribute to transparency, comparability, and lifelong learning, to facilitate recognition of learning outcomes, qualifications, and of course, to mobility as well, to support development of national qualifications frameworks, and to support as well referencing, alignment, cooperation, dialogue, win-win cooperation between national qualifications frameworks, regional qualifications frameworks, and the ACQF at continental level. So we hope that the insights from this school curriculum survey can provide interesting information, inputs, orientations towards the conceptual technical design of the ACQF, maybe some also hints about the descriptors the level descriptors of ACQF, can they somehow incorporate also elements helping or contributing to transformation? Also the idea of that this is all a one learning ecosystem, and lower boundaries between parts of this ecosystem. More dialogue, more mutual learning could also be one of the important, hopefully, outcomes out of this survey. And probably one of the always very important expectations out of this work in partnership and within an approach of ecosystem is that this is all done for people. It is all people oriented. So this is the conclusion of this presentation, and we will have a dedicated session for questions, comments, and any suggestions from your side regarding the survey, the school curriculum survey. I pass immediately the floor back to Mitch Seth as chair of this interaction today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eduarda and Dr. Gertrude, for really that excellent presentation. That has really helped us to understand this activity. And we know there have been some engagements in the chat already about some of the things you've shared with us. So we will be looking forward to being able to address those as we get to the question and answer session, as Eduarda mentioned. We will now move to the next item on the agenda. We'll ask Maurice, Mr. Maurice Nkusi, who is a member of the African Curriculum Executive Council, to make a brief presentation on the research questions that are going to be used for this exercise. Over to you, Mr. Nkusi. Right. I would like to get any confirmation if Mr. Nkusi is on.
Maurice, you are muted.
Okay.
Sorry, I was talking. I was talking. Thank you very much. My microphone was muted. Let me share my presentation so that I can start immediately. Let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
You can. Okay. Thank you very much. Apology, I came a little bit late. I was a little bit confused by the time 12 GMT plus 3. So my calculation was not correct, but I was being informed that I have to come quickly. But I followed the presentation from Eduarda, which was really very informative. And I will also not highlight a lot on a national framework, qualification framework, but I will link it when I will talk about the questions. I will talk about quickly about 2 points, the curriculum at a glance, and I will also talk about what this project, even though it was well explained by the previous presenters, I will talk about it in the perspective of possible questions that may feature in the survey. I'm going just to quickly talk about a few aspects for consideration when it comes to curriculum development. What we know is that we always say that everything starts with the curriculum, and this is true in the work we are doing, especially for the curriculum cluster of the CESA, including different collaborators or in collaboration with different partners of African Union and the European Union. As Mark Sanborn said years ago, he said that too often educators approach curriculum developments as a product to be created. So it's like a document to produce. Sometimes it's like a checkbox exercise for people to say, no, we have done our part. but there are a lot of thinking that we need really to put in when we are developing the curriculum. And we should not only start thinking about the goals only, we need to think about many other things. I will come back to this later on. And Jacobs said that the written curriculum has not matched the taught curriculum at school level. So this is really happening. You find that the intended curriculum, that document, beautiful document, the colorful document we have, sometimes when it comes to the implementation at the school level, this is really not being done according to our expectations. And according to John Maxwell, if you want to make discoveries, if you want to disrupt the status quo, if you want to make progress and find new ways of thinking and doing, you need to ask questions. So asking questions is a process of moving forward, looking at what is not working and make some kind of adjustments, and also find out what is working and sustain what is working. Now I'm going to talk about the relationship between the national priorities, the national framework, and the curriculum. So the national educational development are linked basically on national priorities. And you find those are in the documents that deal with the national development at country level, at national level. And this is done by the cabinet. One of the cabinet office will be in charge of this. So you will find that we have national priorities, and from there they come up with the educational development priorities as well. And once we have the national priorities, we have another agency within the Ministry of Education that will look at the national qualifications. And these are linked to the national priorities, the kind of skills the country needs in order to be able to achieve or to address the national priorities. And we have also a document that will come out of it, is a policy. Most of the time we call it a framework that clearly specify at what level different qualifications, different skill sets, and that are described by the descriptors and so on. And Eduarda explained that very, very well. And then we have the curriculum. So the curriculum we receive the descriptors, the levels from the national curriculum. We develop the programs that are aligned to those descriptors, to those levels, in order to achieve what is in the curriculum priorities. So we have this relationship well explained here. National priorities dictates the kind of workforce the country needs. And from the national qualification framework and the curriculum, programs are developed having the qualification attributes of the national qualification framework. And the curriculum based on the national priorities, the curriculum facilitates the development of workforce with the required skills to drive the national agenda. So this is how this is a very important structure within a country in terms of education, qualifications, and the national priorities, how they are linked together in order to get a coherent result that will satisfy all parties involved. So it's very important now to understand how we unpack the curriculum that have been developed, the intended curriculum with the learning outcomes, the content, the assessment. First, how these three elements are aligned within the document itself, and how this document is implemented by the instructors, the teachers, and how the student responds at this prerogative or directives from the curriculum. So the written curriculum has very important aspects, including learning outcomes, the content, and the assessment. All these three elements are linked to the qualification framework in order to achieve the national priorities. We have the instructors, these are the teachers. So these are the people that are administrators. These are the administrators at the classroom level. So what they do, they have to interpret the curriculum, they have to understand very well the curriculum, they have to unpack it, and they have now to implement it. So they implement it through instructions. So instructions is where they provide students with guidance, where they facilitate learning in order to ensure that students will achieve what the curriculum is prescribing. And we have the student. So the student is another very important player in this triangle. The students are engaged through authentic assessment. So when we talk about authentic assessment, these are the kind of assessment that support students to learn and also find out if the student have learned. So we have other additional type of assessment, like self-assessment, very, very critical for students to find out from themselves if what they have in the instructions from the students are really helping them to achieve what the learning outcomes or the learning objectives at lesson level is prescribing. So we have the diagnostic assessment, very important from the teacher side, to find out if the students are at the level to follow what they are going to teach them. And then we have a peer assessment. So this is a kind of group study between learners, and they learn how to assess each other in order to find out if they manage to satisfy everything. So these three elements are linked together. The instructors, they have to ensure they understand what the curriculum is telling us, and they have achieved in terms of making sure students achieve the learning outcome, the content is well taught at the right level, and the assessments are being also conducted at the right level. So this is the alignment of all these three elements that most of the time is a challenge to most educators. Now here we are proposing the main question. So this is based on everything that have been said. We want to find out the status of curriculum development, implementation, and alignment to national qualification framework in Africa toward the responsiveness to national needs and the transformational aspect toward the learners. So this is very important. We want to find out really from at the continental level if really we are achieving these main two aspects. Here I'm talking about the responsiveness and the transformational aspect. Okay, so when we talk about responsiveness, we are saying how does the curriculum respond to the national priorities in terms of social, economic, and environmental development. So these are the three pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals, and how the curriculum is aligned to the national qualification framework to realize the national priorities. So we need also to come up with some questions that will help us to find out about these aspects of responsiveness. Transformational, so this is also something very important. How the curriculum transforms the learners, taking into account the contemporary needs and challenges Africa is facing in the ever-changing world, characterized by environmental changes, such as climate change, the use of technology, the era of big data or data science, spearheaded by artificial intelligence. We are already in the fourth industrial revolution and the other SDGs goals. How curriculum is really facilitate this to happen, the transformational aspect to happen the way we want it. And another aspect, and this is based on our experience, we realize that in education, when we teach our students, we focus more on how, on what and how, but we always leave something very critical behind the why, and that why will transform the students in order to take ownership of the new information and to transform it from knowledge into experience. Now the question is, how is the curriculum make this to happen? And if we believe that this is really in our curriculum, is it really well articulated in our curriculum? So here we have some other questions that are linked to the main question that we need to start thinking about. But here is not all the questions. It's some of them, of course, in our discussions, maybe you will find out what I didn't mention here. You may let us know, so we'll edit. Who are the people involved in the curriculum development? And this is very important. So we found that only a small group of people, of course it should be small, but it should be representative. So we are asking what are the criteria of the members of teams or the curriculum team, the people who are in charge to develop the curriculum, and who is in charge to select them. So we need that information in order to find out if really the people that are selected to be part of the curriculum development are the right people with the right skills. Is the curriculum development aligned to the national priorities and needs? And this is very important. So I explained when I spoke about the three dimensions of the curriculum development implementation. Is the alignment well articulated? Because sometimes we may see the connection in our thinking, but on the document, in the document, and the different aspect in the document is really not very clear. And the people that are in charge to implement it, they cannot do it because it's not clear, it's not well articulated. To what extent are curricula aligned and contributes to the qualification framework principles and objectives, including the level descriptors and domains? So we need to ensure that there is a very clear linkages between the curriculum and the framework, the qualification frameworks. Because whatever we are doing, whatever the knowledge, the skills, the competence we are giving to our students, this is linked to a specific qualification that we want our learners, our students to get at the end of the day. How aligned are the learning outcomes, the content and assessments, both formative and summative? So this is very critical. You find that, you remember I said at the beginning that sometimes the written curriculum is not matched to the implemented, the taught curriculum. Sometimes you find that the alignment is not really very clear, and sometimes a lot of mistakes are really taking place where you find students are not taught at the right level. The assessment are not given at the right level. So the curriculum should really make very clear on how this can be implemented, and or to ensure that the alignment is well indicated in the document. How is the curriculum understood by the teachers? And this is very, very important. And remember, we are saying that teachers are the administrators. These are the people that are in charge of implementing the curriculum. Now, the question is how well they understood the curriculum. How are teachers engaged in curriculum development? And sometimes you find that teachers are not involved. And really this should be discouraged. Of course, in many countries, I've seen even in Namibia, teachers are involved because we have committees where you have teachers and the researchers and the people from higher education and the teacher institution, college of education. So you find that if you bring all these people together, including the people who are going to implement that curriculum, who are the teachers, will bring really a very important aspect, taking in consideration what is happening in the classroom. How do the teachers' different understanding and experience influence the way of engaging in curriculum development? So this is very important. Qualified teachers they have already well-established practice, and they can contribute a lot in curriculum development. Are there dedicated curriculum centers in every country on the continent? So this is another very critical question. Who are in charge? Is there an office, a center within the Ministry of Education in charge of developing curriculum? In some countries, you'll find there is a group of people or just a small office of people who are in charge of just developing that curriculum, which is considered as a set of content, the method of assessment to be indicated and so on. But you realize that there is no dedicated center with people specialized in curriculum development. So we need to find out if really this kind of situation exists in all the African countries or the 54 African countries. Are teachers training institutions involved in school curriculum development? We have seen in some countries really this doesn't happen very often. So we need really to find out from different countries if these institutions that are in charge of teaching, training teachers, these are the people who are going to implement the curriculum that have been developed if they are involved already in the process. Is the curriculum responsive to the integration or the innovation of technology into teaching, learning, and assessment? So this is very critical, and you can see the world is moving, the contemporary issues, really the integration of technology in teaching delivery, in learning, in assessment should be taken in consideration, is very, very important. How is quality assurance implemented across the whole process of the curriculum development? This is another very important aspect. Quality assurance should not start at the end of the day where we have to do monitoring and evaluation. We need really to start quality assurance just at the inception of the project to ensure that at the end of the project, we get the result that we are looking for. Is knowledge equally valued as certification? And what are the strategies in place to ensure that learners are not taught just to pass the test and the exams? So this is very critical. You find that we value a lot on certification, on qualifications, but what the qualification represent is really not really in our students. The knowledge, the skills, the competence, and so on. We need to find out what are the mechanisms that learners in Africa are not just taught to pass tests. Okay? Is the curriculum well articulated in terms of cultural aspects to ensure that values, attitude at national and continental level are preserved? And this is very critical to ensure that Africa, we keep our values, our culture, while we are developing our skills. So the last three questions: what are the processes and instruments in place for curriculum design, consultation, implementation, assessment, certification, and so on? Is there a curriculum framework guiding the development of the taught curriculum? We realize that in some areas, in some countries, this curriculum framework is really not in existence, or is not really very clear to look like something that is guiding the development of curricula in a specific country. We need to find out if we have such curriculum framework in different countries. The curriculum development culture sensitive to ensure national values are also prevailed. This is also very critical. So what I'm saying here, we want to see how we can frame some of these questions or all additional questions that will come to ensure that the questions are much easier for the identified participants to answer. Okay, Mitch, I'm done with my presentation. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nkusi, for really that comprehensive and passionate presentation. And really, you've laid it out very clearly for us in terms of curriculum, what we should be looking at when it comes to this survey. So without taking much more time, I am going to now turn the floor over to Eduarda, who will facilitate the next session. We are moving now into an interactive session. You on the call consist of mainly our respondents for this survey. We will be coming back to you again to ask you to really help us with this exercise. So this is the opportunity, and this is really the time where we want to come to you and ask you, from what you've heard, what are some of the questions you have? What are some of the issues that you've identified? Please let us know, and we will ask you to, I believe Eduarda will let us know how this is going to be conducted, and then you can let us bring in all those comments and questions. Over to you, Eduarda.
Thank you very much, Mitchset, and thank you very much, Maurice, for the very wide and interconnected, systemic reflection that you have developed and elaborated through your presentation. So this session is now going to be mostly directed to replying to questions. So participants, you have already started formulating some questions, requests of clarification. This is one side, so questions for clarification. There are also some proposals and suggestions that are appearing, that are being also formulated in the chat box. That's also very important part of this session, this interactive session that we now have. So without any further, I'm just checking, there are in fact very many questions already in the chat box. So Maurice and Gertrude, would you like already to start looking at some of the questions, clarification questions, and also suggestions? We have already tried a bit of quick replies to some of them, particularly those that are in French. So maybe we could immediately look at the questions that are on the chat box. If Maurice, you want to go through through some of them, and Gertrude as well. Yeah. And colleagues, do not hesitate, participants do not hesitate to write more questions. And of course, while Maurice and Gertrude are taking stock of the questions on the chat box, I would like to invite all of you to raise your hands and start adding any comments, requests of clarifications, those who did not yet contribute in the chat box. Please, you are free, you are most welcome. You can raise your hand and you will get the floor to express your views, your comments. And in the meanwhile, Maurice is taking a look at the chat box and try to synthesize and systematize some contributions, some replies. So Gertrude, you have the hand raised. Please go ahead. And then we have Mr. John Nyambe as well, right after you. Gertrude?
Yeah, thank you very much, brother. There is a question from, I don't still remember, but somebody was asking whether partners can join in the survey. We are saying that yes, so long as you can give us variable information, because what we are looking for is the information to inform the next step. So if you can give us the information, you are most welcome.
Thank you very much. Maybe Mr. John Nyambe, please, you have the floor for your question or comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Maurice and team. They were indeed very comprehensive presentations. I have a comment on the last presentation from Maurice on the subject of responsiveness. The presentation spoke about responsiveness to national goals, issues of social, economic, and environmental development. He also spoke about responsiveness to cultural values, national cultural values, and also responsiveness to student learning needs. What I wasn't sure about was whether the curriculum research will also look at responsiveness to continental issues at the African level. Whether these curricula, country-specific curricula, are also responsive to issues at the continental level. So that's my observation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nyambe. That's an excellent remark. So responsiveness to the continental values objectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other participant who would like to take the floor, please? You are most welcome. You can take the floor directly since there is nobody now waiting.
Yeah.
Yes, please, Lily.
Eduarda, maybe just to respond to what Nyambe is from Namibia, is my colleague here in Namibia. Yeah, I think his question is really very critical. How can we help our learners, our children in Africa to understand the global aspects, specifically at the continental level? I think this is something that we need also to think about in the formulation of our questions, to find out if the curriculum at national level is considering some global aspects. I know that I spoke about the different pillars of the Sustainable Development Goals. If you look at some of those goals, they are at the global level, not only at the national level. So the question is how curriculum in Africa articulating the implementation of sustainable development goals within different subjects, within different areas of learning. So the question from John, I think we need to reflect about it and see how we can bring questions and get information from different countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's an excellent opportunity, this meeting today, to gather your views and suggestions that can then help inform the survey instrument, the questionnaire. And this is certainly a very important point to be taken into account in the development, the conceptualization of the questionnaire. So now we have already 4 colleagues with raised hands. Yes?
Hello, I was trying to think that in the questions, we need to also bring out something to do with comparative education, because even if we are talking about Africa, we are talking about a global child. And much as we want to focus on whether it is bringing out the competences, but is it bringing out a product that will fit globally? So those goes back to the theories of comparative education. How is this product that has been produced in our different curricula fitting into the expectations of the world, let alone the sustainable development goals, but also, can this child go and work anywhere on the globe? Can this child fit all over the place? So some of those will have to come out. Thank you.
That's it, and also an excellent remark, Dr. Grace. So let me then, please, I will pass the floor first to Lily G. She was the first raising her hand, then to Moses, to Burama, and then Nicholas from the African Union Commission. Lily, you have the floor, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Eduarda, and it's really enriching webinar. And so my name is Lily, and I work at the International Bureau of Education, which is the UNESCO's institute specialized in curriculum development, processes and products. And we are honored to work with ACA closely in the recent years, and also participated in the recent activities of the CESA curriculum cluster. And as Africa is the UNESCO's priority, we're very happy to join this process and contribute as much as possible. And my rather comment, we really embrace the systemic approach to curriculum development and output. And we are totally in phase, in line with Maurice's presentation, covering all the aspects related to the curriculum process. Just we would like to make sure that all the aspects that Maurice raised in his presentation would be covered by this survey, because if we read this the document of the that you shared before the webinar about the survey, there are main research questions that are listed, and we felt that the alignment, the question of alignment between curriculum, teacher education, and assessment, as Maurice really rightly shared, was not sufficiently addressed or reflected in the research questions. Whereas the alignment between curriculum and the qualification frameworks, this is really one of the focus of the research question, of the existing research questions. And we really would like to advocate for all the other aspects and alignments to be addressed, meaningfully addressed and reflected in the survey questions. And also to the number 8 of the research question regarding the quality assurance of school curriculum, we would like also to address the process of consultation with the key stakeholders, as well as the monitoring and evaluation mechanism of the whole curriculum process and the outcomes are also really key processes that would contribute to quality assurance of curriculum. Thank you very much. Over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. If Moses, please, you have the floor, and then Burama, Nicholas, Jacqueline. Jacqueline also joined. Moses?
Yeah, thank you so much, Eduarda and Africa Curriculum Association colleagues. Really, it's good presentation. I just want to maybe throw some a little bit of reflection in terms of whether the thoughts also are incorporated in terms of linkages, understanding linkages across educational levels and transition, basically whether there are some gaps, for example, between early childhood and lower primary, primary and secondary, whether there is that consistency or there are some gaps in terms of flow of curriculum areas. And then I also like to say that as a coordinator of the early childhood education and development cluster, AU, we are also doing some basic review of information on early childhood curriculum and related qualifications. And I believe that we'll be able to share the information with the team, maybe to enhance or to support the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moses. Your proposal, particularly the last part, is very interesting. So this cross-fertilization across clusters is one of the important objectives of the entire undertaking of clusters, so synergies, and it will really be very welcome, this your contribution, and further on. Thank you. Then Burama, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. And I want to thank you all. I think this is a very healthy collaboration between ACA, IBE, and the African Union. And I think with this type of collaboration, we can always express hope that there will be change in Africa. Actually, as a member of ACA, I think my concern actually has been taken up by Lily. And I want to add my voice to what she has said about the issue of alignment, because it appears that we are focusing more on the alignment between the curriculum and the national qualification framework. And I think, as Lily has rightly said, we have to think more of also aligning the school curriculum, assessment, and teacher training. My next point actually has also been covered in the presentation. He has not mentioned that, but he said that the questions will be framed in a way that the respondents can definitely understand and be able to respond to it. So that has also taken care of my second concern, so that there are certain things, hence it is continental questionnaire. There are certain things that we need to break down a bit. For example, when we say, is curriculum responsive to integration of technology? Yeah, so we need to shape these questions in a way, in small digestible pieces, so that different respondents can definitely respond to them in the way that we would want to have it. So I want to thank you very much, and I'm happy to meet colleagues at from ACA. So I'm very, very much happy. Glad to meet all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your points, and the point you made about breaking down certain questions to make them digestible, let's say, for the respondents is certainly fundamental for the conceptualization further on of the survey, questionnaire, and instrument and the approach. I'd like then to pass the floor to, if you don't mind, Nicholas, to Jacqueline first, and then to you. Is that okay, Nicholas? Jacqueline Onyango. Thank you. Jacqueline, please. And then Nicholas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eduarda and the team. It's great to see a team of people who are interested in curriculum. Let me join the rest in thanking the presenters. I think the presentations have been very insightful. I love the broad areas that are being taken care of. But probably just a clarification in case I missed out. I think somebody had asked, how are we looking at the different levels? And I think it's good to appreciate that the different African countries may be offering different types of curricula. If you look at whether they are standard-based, outcome-based, or we have the competency-based like what Kenya is providing, what have we put in place to synchronize that? Because it's good to learn from each other. Since the intention is not really to see to use the differentiation for purposes of enhancing. Then as we think about the levels, yes, considering that different countries have different years for different levels. Kenya, for example, is running a curriculum, 2 curricula at the same time. One where primary goes for 8 years, and another one, the competency-based, which we are just implementing. We are going for 6 years in primary. So how are we going to take care of that variation? And lastly, I don't think I really had the segregation of learners, especially in terms of learners with special needs. This is a completely critical group. There are various categories, and some of them are very numerous. It would be good to know how different countries are handling these, and even what are the actual, maybe the special needs they're dealing with, and we can learn from each other. Otherwise, this is really an exciting time. Great to see this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. May I pass then the floor to your homeland colleague, Nicholas, Kenya, again on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for giving me the chance, and thank you, colleagues, for the input and the presentations made so far. I want to echo what my predecessors have mentioned in their submissions. I want to also I note that there was also inclusion of values, and this is what I want that the questionnaire also really foregrounds, that is the promotion of African core values and the value-based education systems. When the questionnaire is being brought out, we are all cognizant of the aspects related to globalization and digitization, and how do we also still maintain the core African values even as we seek to embrace what comes with globalization and digitization. This is very, very important as we move forward, and I believe that question needs to be, as my colleague mentioned, unpacked. And also the I don't know how this could be treated. The issue of life skills education, embracement of this in the questionnaire. These are particularly as we move from the era of COVID, it will be very, very important that learners are also grounded in these core critical areas. Otherwise, thank you very much for the presentations and for colleagues' engagement in this process. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much. May I, if you don't mind, I'd like just to say a word in to new colleagues, who just joined this meeting, and namely from Cape Verde. And I will speak in Portuguese. I'm sorry. So, Lídia Barbosa.
Lídia Barbosa, I would like to greet you. Please use the channel of interpretation that is in Portuguese. There is an icon at the bottom of your écran.
L'interprétation fonctionne déjà. Vous avez donc la langue française également.
For the colleagues, you have the French version interpretation ready. Thank you very much. Yes, c'était vers l'anglais.
Do we have additional remarks? Do you have additional comments at this stage? If you don't mind, I would like just to sum up one or two points related with the implementation, the organization and implementation of this study. So, as it was said from the start of the meeting, we exactly wanted this interaction with all of you, stakeholders, participants, members of the CISA curriculum cluster, African Union Commission, in order to, of course, gather your points of view, your observations, and orientations, helping then the project team, the experts, in the elaboration of the concrete survey instrument. At the same time, we also need to take into account that the scope of work has to be defined and contained within also the, let's say, possibilities of the study in terms of time, resources. So I would like us all to take also this constraint into account. As always, the scope of work in any project of continental scope nature on the African continent is always very vast and diverse. And this is a specific characteristic that is also a richness. It is part of the wealth of the continent. But we need also to go step by step in terms of study. So we will be back, of course, the project team will be back to all of you with the proposed survey instrument, the questions. Obviously, they will also be tested. And it might be that some of the ambitions cannot be necessarily integrated immediately in this first study, in this first mapping. But of course, the project is going to do the best possible to embrace as much as possible the most important interactions, the most important elements, components of the systemic approach to curriculum, taking also into account the element qualifications and qualifications framework, because of this linkage between the two projects, so curriculum development and African continental qualifications framework. That was just a very brief remark, asking you to please consider the necessary balance between the scope and the available possibilities. And this is the first study. So I would say that we started the preparation, the discussions only in February, and we are already able to start very soon. I'll pass the floor immediately back to Mitch, Seth, and Gertrude, but I just wanted to say that in the meanwhile, the consultancy has already been selected, and we will soon also announce more information about this element. The work is going to take place, to be organized and systematically conducted from May to October. Final version of the report in November, after of course discussion, validation. And this will be a very, I think, important period, and your involvement is absolutely fundamental for the success of this undertaking. And I'm very, very pleased to see the enthusiasm, the interest, and the excellent remarks and comments being done throughout this meeting. Thank you very much for the time being. I pass immediately the floor to Mitch Seth for the continuation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Edward. And we really thank all of you for the important inputs you've provided us, which is going to be very useful going forward. I remember, Edward, you had mentioned that Dr. Gertrude may have something to say. So maybe I'll pass the floor to Dr. Gertrude to say something if she has something to add.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mitch. Yeah, actually, I'm not adding anything, but I'm answering a question which was put across about the early childhood involvement in the survey. I just want to make it clear that during our mapping of the survey scope, we never considered early childhood. So I don't know whether it is the wish of the members present to include early childhood or we leave it out completely. I pose also the question back to the respondents.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gertrude, for really highlighting that issue of early childhood and how we incorporate it together with all the other comments that we've received today. So we will definitely have to go and look at all these comments, and please, if you have more comments, just you can post them in the chats for us so that we can export all the information from the chats and look at them and see how to work with them to improve the survey and be able to have better outcomes. And now we will move to the final part of our agenda, and I'll invite Ms. Weston Cheryl, who is in charge of curriculum at the Department of Basic Education in South Africa. I mentioned earlier that the curriculum cluster is co-chaired with the Republic of South Africa, and she is our representative at the Department of Basic Education in South Africa. So I'll hand it over to Cheryl to help us with the next steps and just sum up the main conclusions from our discussions.
Thank you very much, Sid, and good afternoon to all of the colleagues who are present here, and just to all the presenters also, thank you. I have been following the discussions, and I think we will all agree the contributions that was made by the team, by the participants, is really an indication of the need of this study and others. And I want to also add my voice to what Eduarda has explained, that there is unfortunately limitations to this study that we have to take into account, but it doesn't preclude us from in future engaging in other studies, because I really think what has been mentioned by most of the colleagues are so valuable, and it's areas that require further investigation. So within what is possible, the steering committee will definitely incorporate as much as the areas that has been identified, but with the understanding that we may not be incorporating, or we may not be able to incorporate all at the same time. From what we've seen during the presentations this morning, it is really clearly articulated the need for the study. I think all of us who are on this call are now in agreement that there's a dire need for us to conduct this study, because the findings of this study will ensure and assist us to push forward as a continent. It will ensure that we strengthen education delivery in the continent. It will ensure that we improve and harmonize the quality of education on the African continent, and really begin to move forward as a collective. Right across the continent, there's excellent pockets of excellence. And I think one of the other speakers has also mentioned it. This study will allow us to also identify those and learn from those best practices which are already occurring, learn from the lessons from each other to ensure that we become almost more efficient as a continent, instead of all of us conducting these various little studies. We all know that as a country, or as various countries, we are in various stages of curriculum reform. Some have completed, some are in the process of implementing, some are considering, some are really just starting out. So this will allow us to really learn from each other and coherently come up with a framework that we will be able to use as individual countries and contextualize or domesticate to our own needs. The study, I must say, is really historical in its nature and really trailblazing. It's moving in uncharted waters. A study like this has not been done. So we are at odds in our different countries where we are. We're not able to identify, and we're all struggling with very much the same issues, but unable to share best practices. I may be looking for a solution that you already have and that you can share with me at the same time. So this is what the study will reveal to us and allow us to use the information going forward. We do, as part of our next steps, I think it's critical that now that we've shared broadly the study, its scope, where we plan to go with it, it is important that all of us as member states now begin to prepare for the survey. We now begin to interrogate, we will share the presentations that was made today so that you can in your own countries begin to prepare for the survey. We should also ensure that when the survey is developed, when the steering committee comes back to the cluster and back to the team with the final survey in terms of testing or piloting the survey before we finally launch the survey, all of the member states, and we should ensure that all member states participate. If we miss out on a country, even one country, we are missing out on too much. So it's therefore incumbent upon all of us to ensure, while we know not all member countries are currently here, but we need to make every effort to ensure that we increase our database so that we share the survey with as broad a spectrum as possible. The data we receive will really be enriched by the participation of the cluster members. Without you as the cluster members, this or the envisaged outcome of this particular study will not be reached. And therefore, I want to impress upon you and really plead with you to ensure that we start preparations in our own countries for the study. So when it happens, it's really, and this is why we have the webinar, so that we have time to internalize what the study would focus on and what our role would have to be. At this stage, we can see that the survey, as there's been several, I think the issue of alignment came up again and again in the discussions now, and it's really an alignment with continental goals and aspirations, which is important because as much as we individual countries, we're still on one continent and we want to move the continent forward. If one country is not with us or in step with the rest of the continent, as a continent, we're not moving forward. We need to ensure that also, as was mentioned, alignment, or keeping in mind the global initiatives, but not forgetting or ensuring that our own African aspirations and value systems are still reflected in this framework as we move forward. We also need to look at, and I think that's what the survey or the steering committee would together with the consultant would engaging now, is really in constructing the questions so that it's really manageable, bite-size almost, in order for us to digest it as we provide the responses to the various questions. Some critical information, or in fact requests were made around ECD, around life skills, around articulation and progression between levels and within levels in a country. But also, as we've shared earlier, as was shared earlier by Eduarda, we will try to expand and include as much as possible within the scope of the study. But at the same time, as I said before, this also provides further avenues for exploration, which whilst we may not be able to do now, but it will allow us in future to focus on those areas. So in concluding, really, our next steps, really as a summary, is to say all of us as individual countries need to, states need to go back and prepare for the survey. We need to internalize some of the, in fact, the presentations that was made, and just start our internal preparation for the next meeting. We will come back at a future date, not too far away, to the cluster to present a more deep level of the survey, and therefore ensure that we are, in terms of progress, are beginning to ready ourselves for the launch and the actual application or implementation of the survey. I must just, in concluding, Mixet, before I hand back to you as the chairperson, really thank the members for joining, thank the partners for joining, and the valuable input that you made, which will ensure that we strengthen, and this is exactly why this webinar was held, for you to identify areas that we can strengthen in the survey, because ultimately this study must serve us on the continent, and that is what we want to achieve. It must serve us and our needs as a country, and therefore your involvement, your input, your role is critical. With those few remarks, I would like to hand back to Mixe to conclude the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for what you've really given us a very smooth landing for this meeting, which has really gone on very well, with so many presentations that have been very, very informative and comprehensive. And as Cheryl already said, thank you so much to all of you for participating in this meeting, our presenters, the interpreters, for the great work you've done in this meeting today. And thank you all, our participants, for the comments you've given us. We want to assure you that we are going to take them and look at them and see how best to incorporate them. And we are also going to be coming back to you again. So we really look forward to your continued support in this process as we try to conduct this important exercise. So thank you once again, and we wish you a great rest of the day. Goodbye.
Bye. maybe we can all open the cameras for a picture.
Thank you so much.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Yes, you can put on your group picture before you leave.
Goodbye, everybody. Thank you very, very much for this excellent meeting, and bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye, colleagues.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Maurice.
À très bientôt. À très bientôt.
Thank you, Eduarda.
À très bientôt, tous les collègues.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you to all.